Bienvenidos. Welcome to the 47th annual convening of one of the most enriching experiences in our community, the celebration of diversity and traditions known as Tucson Meet Yourself. I am Supervisor Betty Villegas, and on behalf of the Pima County Board of Supervisors and all the residents of our beloved community, I am happy you can join us. Pima County is a mix of ancestral cultures with lifetime and longtime residents and our new arrivals, all sharing the air, the land, and the history of the beautiful Sonoran Desert. Lucky for us, we also share the foods, dances, music, manual arts, and rituals of dozens of different cultural communities and folk groups, all of which call Pima County home. Every year, Tucson Meet Yourself, sometimes referred to as TMY, is our community's shared big tent where we discover, respect, and celebrate each other. Congratulations and thank you, Tucson Meet Yourself organizers, for adapting this year's 2020 festival to the new public health precaution guidelines. This year, TMY has reframed the event to include a socially distanced virtual experience that offers each of us an opportunity to be connected while remaining safe. There is so much beauty, strength, and resilience in every one of our cultural traditions, and I encourage you to join us in support and celebration of them all. Please enjoy all the offerings, and remember, we will get through all the challenges because we are Pima County strong.
Welcome to this program, part of the 2020 edition of Tucson Meet Yourself Reframe. I want to take this moment to thank our sponsors. Without their generosity, none of these wonderful offerings would have been possible. First, our major sponsors: Pima County, the City of Tucson, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Arizona Commission on the Arts, the Arts Foundation for Tucson and Southern Arizona, and the University of Arizona College of Social and Behavioral Sciences, and the Southwest Center. In addition, I want to thank our presenting sponsors, businesses that stuck with us even in these difficult times. Thank you to Cox, Tucson Electric Power, Visit Tucson, Desert Diamond Casino, and Chicanos por la Causa. Enjoy the program.
So welcome and thank you for joining us here in Tucson Meet Yourself Reframed Culture Kitchen. This is a premiere of our new Foodways Wednesdays live, and today we're with the Dunbar Pavilion staff and supporters, and going to talk about the garden space. We're going to talk about wellness. We're going to talk about a delicious sweet potato pie, and so I just wanted to invite you into this space and thank you for being here. This event is hosted and was conceptualized in conjunction with the City of Tucson, or I'm sorry, the Tucson City of Gastronomy Social Justice Committee. And my name is Liane Hernandez. I am this year's Culture Kitchen Curator for Tucson Meet Yourself Reframed. And in addition to all of the sponsors, I just want to say a big thanks to all of the TMY staff for showing up and being such a great support in this reframing. And so I just wanted to say thank you all for being here today in this space. And so if you don't mind, why don't we do some introductions? So I'm just going to follow with folks how I see them in my Zoom, if that's okay. And so I wonder if, Desiree, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
My name is Desiree Gonzales, and I am the program manager at the Dunbar Pavilion. So I oversee all of the health and wellness programs that we have going on.
Fantastic. And Yesi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Yesi. I'm currently under the role of the Garden Manager at the Dunbar Community Garden.
Fantastic. And Tani, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Tani Sanchez. I am a professor in Africana Studies at the University of Arizona.
Fantastic. And Debbie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I am Debi Chess, and I'm the executive director of the Dunbar Pavilion.
Thank you so much for doing all of the work to make this possible. It's been such an interesting process, I think, for all of us as we have coordinated our way through a completely online festival this year. And so I just want to express my incredible gratitude to you all for showing up here and for being so gracious with your time. And I just want to express my appreciation. So let's get into it a little bit. Debbie, I wanted to kind of start with you, and then I'll go through a series of questions for you all, and then we'll end with some joint conversation during our time together. So, Debbie, talk a little bit about where the Dunbar Pavilion is situated, where it's located, and how that kind of shapes the programming that you engage in.
So the Dunbar Pavilion is located in the historic Dunbar Spring neighborhood, which is just a little bit south and west of downtown. I'm sorry, north and west of downtown Tucson. Our physical location is 325 West 2nd Street. And so we occupy a block, the L of a block between Main, University, 11th Avenue and 2nd Avenue.
Given your location and kind of the history that's embodied in that space, who's participating in your work pre-COVID and now as well, I guess? Let's talk a little bit about how community is being encouraged in the space right now.
So the Dunbar Spring neighborhood was actually the first African-American community in Tucson. A large percentage of African-Americans lived in Tucson, and due to demographic shifts, gentrification, it's a very low demographic of African-Americans in the neighborhood, existing in the neighborhood now. And so the Dunbar really is the last manifestation of African-American culture, African-American presence, not only in the Dunbar Spring neighborhood, but in Tucson in general. And so in terms of numbers, the African-American community is so small. 4% is what the census tract or the census data reported at the last census. So we'll see with the current census what that actually is. And so the fact that there is such a small community of African Americans, we really, that's what makes the Dunbar even more important and urgent, that we support that space and what happens in that space. But we also recognize that African American history, African American narratives are the narratives of Tucson, and that we can't pull apart and think about what Dunbar is without thinking about how it impacts the whole of Tucson, and we can't isolate that narrative about the entirety of the Southwest and Southern Arizona in particular. So we center the Black narrative, we center Black experience, but that also means that we are doing that in service to making sure that that narrative stays ever present in how Tucson is talked about and how Tucson is looked at. And it's not just about Black people, it's about Tucson's history.
Right. That's interesting. And I think that that's an emerging process as well, right? I mean,
yeah.
And so with this current staff and with this current configuration, talk a little bit about the type of programming that's taking place around wellness, both cultural, political, and also via the garden, if you would.
Yeah. What's so exciting about this program is our Dunbar Health and Wellness program that was seeded by the Howry Foundation. And so it's really about reclaiming reclaiming practices of healing that are indigenous and kind of encoded in Black and Brown DNA about survival. And what started out as kind of, we had this really grand vision about some of the programs and workshops that we were going to do. What has really happened is through this process, we've seen where we've had to kind of step back and really look at the trauma of what it is to exist in a space that wasn't built for you and wasn't built for, and the trauma that has, how that has affected our community. And so the evolution of the programs that Desiree and Yesi have put together, the workshops, really speak to healing that trauma, to the emotional pieces of that I don't think that we clearly understood prior to entering into this work.
Right.
I don't think that we really understood how much pain the Black community is in, and how when we started this program, the George Floyd incident hadn't happened, Breonna Taylor, all of these very violent assaults on the Black community as a whole had not happened. And so as a result of those and those things that continue to just bombard and attack our community became the foundation of moving forward with this program. And there were things that we already knew because we had been in this, Black people have been surviving this for centuries, but it became even more immediate as the programs progress.
Wow. Desiree, do you want to speak a little bit about like your past, present, maybe future ideas around the wellness programming?
Absolutely. And really, I'll just touch on like just the organization as a whole. If we look back even, 3 years ago, the Dunbar was largely volunteer run.
Right.
And so thanks to the Howery, our partnership with the Howery Foundation and the Center for Regional Food Studies, it really put wind in the sails. We were able to hire on staff and, start this health and wellness program. So I'm really excited about that. And even with COVID happening, we've had to be flexible. We've had to, rearrange things. But it's really been a gift to move our programming online. There's been a lot of benefits. We've been able to more clearly center our offerings to BIPOC. And it's also allowed us to expand our impact, not just locally, but nationally. So we have folks from other states that are able to log in and gain benefit from our workshops. And we kicked off the year with some racial justice workshops. We had a racial justice workshop led by Julie Ragland. We also had Carlin Bradley come in and do a series on anti-Blackness specifically for a BIPOC audience. And it's been really amazing to hear feedback and just see interest and see our numbers just rise and so many people tuning in. And so it's been really awesome to watch and be a part of.
That's fantastic. And Yesi, do you want to talk a little bit about how the garden is kind of being configured into this larger project of wellness programming?
Yeah, so the way in which we have connected the health and wellness programming with the garden is also by creating workshops that connect to plant knowledge, which in itself is rooted in medicinal, cultural, and the ancestral knowledge that a lot of Indigenous and Black communities carry. And so this is all connected to that well-being of Black and Indigenous communities of color. And so as the year continues, we hope to provide more workshops on herbal medicine making, seed saving, rainwater harvesting, and adobe building, all of which are practices that have always existed within Indigenous and Afro-Indigenous communities.
That's really powerful stuff. It's as a food person, as someone who identifies as in the past as a chef and just somebody who's so enthusiastic around food and community building and the connections to overall wellness, I find that your approach is really innovative, and also it reminds us that we have for millennia had skills right? And had all the tools necessary for survival on so many levels. And it's a really beautiful and powerful set of programming. So I'm excited about continuing to watch it evolve and to participate as well. And so I want to just say thank you for that. And Tani, your role as a community volunteer and also educator, I'm just wondering, how do you come to the work of the Dunbar Pavilion? What do you see your role? How do you see that acting in the future as well?
Well, how did I come to it? I was in a group called the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society that started in the early 1990s. And we did a cookbook, and the purpose of the cookbook ties into actually what Debbie was talking about in terms of Dunbar, which is to sort of center Black people within the community and to talk about their lives and to bring light upon them, so that people come to Tucson and they think there are no Black people here, or they never did anything, but it's a form of storytelling, truth-telling, so that people know who was here, who were some of the movers and the shakers, what did they do. So we used a cookbook format and the collection of interviews to highlight these people that were significant in the community, and some people who weren't well known at all. So that cookbook was produced in 1993. We had different versions of it over the years, and then we sold all our copies and we moved on to other projects. And we had been doing this since the organization started. A woman named Gloria Smith started this organization, and she would do tours, Black history tours, and we would bring in speakers for the society. So I had always kept a copy of the book. I still had it on computer because I was the editor and coordinator back then. And I always wanted to do an updated version. And I'm not really sure how, but Debbie, I think, got a hold of a copy and a few other people. And they started talking about updating it, but not just with, newer people, younger people, but also to bring in some of the ways that people are maybe making this healthier, or the way they've adapted it to new ideas and new standards of what health is perceived to be. So that's how I got into it.
It's so amazing to look at the various connections and ways in which people can stay connected to the work of the Dunbar. And so Debbie, I think I cut you off. What were you going to share?
Oh no, I was going to say, I want to, the work of as Desiree mentioned, the Center for Regional Food Studies has been so pivotal in this as well, in terms of creating context of why this work is so important on a larger environmental scale, and our role in food production and food consumption. And so it just seemed like a natural fit with the Center of Regional Food Studies to have Tani's book, cookbook, kind of align with the overall vision of what the program was, and that the Center for Regional Food Studies really helped us understand, and continues to help us understand the role that race and class play in the stewardship of land and the stewardship of how we take agency over our bodies and make decisions of consumption.
So Debbie, thank you so much for inviting us into the garden on Friday. And it was such a cool experience. And I have to say, my friend's son was involved with helping to record that video. And as a 15-year-old who has grown up and was born and raised in Tucson, he had never experienced the Dunbar. And that was one of the reasons I wanted him to record for us, because he came away from it so amazed and so impacted by the story of the garden, of the Dunbar, and of the work that y'all are doing. And so I was just so thrilled to get his perspective and his enthusiasm around, I didn't know those stories. I had never heard those, that part of our community. And he was so, you know, he goes to school up the road and had never set foot on Dunbar. And so he was so excited. And so that enthusiasm was really infectious for me, and remembering the importance of place and placemaking.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to be a host to folks that it's always a pleasure to play host to folks that have never experienced the space and don't know the story, you know, and that's why it's so important that we preserve these spaces, because when that story gets lost, people lose a sense, not just Black folks, but people in general lose a sense of their own identity and the role that they play in craft, in their participation in colonialism, their participation in white supremacy, their participation in all of these. And until we tell the whole story, people cannot take responsibility, and not just take responsibility, imagine ways of reversing that trajectory of continued oppression of peoples.
Absolutely.
I think what Debbie said is so important. As I've been doing interviews and talking to people for various different projects, there's like a whole life of Black people. And, you know, I was raised in Tucson, so I'm really familiar with that. But there's a whole life of people of value who had an impact. The Estevan Center, people don't know it was Black women that did it. Black women back in the 1930s that went and petitioned the city to get it. I mean, there's this whole culture that is just erased. It's not addressed at all. And that's one of the things that I think Dunbar does well. And not just that it was erased or ignored, but it was vibrant, it was lively, it was loving. And that's what I want to come through in this cookbook. That whole notion that you don't belong, you're not really a citizen, you shouldn't be here if you're a person of color, if you're Latino or you're Black. When you go back, we do belong. It's not that we belong, we always, you know, as long as we were here, we were really here. And having those stories out there can change people's perspectives.
Absolutely. About who those builders of this place are, right?
Yes.
Right. And also to reiterate what I said about is taking responsibility for folks that, you know, for the dominant culture, taking responsibility for their role in where people of color are now. And if you don't know the story, if you don't know the complete story, then you can't claim that when you know, you can't claim that you didn't know, right? And so by telling that story, that it becomes your responsibility to reverse that. It becomes, you have no excuse not to be an active participant in anti-racism, anti-colonialism, anti-white supremacy. You can no longer claim ignorance.
Right. And then, right, by extension, restoration can begin once we start acknowledging the truth.
Yeah.
Right. But the truth has to be told, right?
Yeah, looking at all the different groups and saying, okay, Native Americans were really important here. You know, I mean, you should know that, you kind of get the feeling, but read the stories. And then all of a sudden it becomes, you stop being, well, I'm superior, or I'm inferior, or whatever. You start being, hey, we're a group of people who some sort of way, maybe not always in the best ways, but we manage to contribute. We manage to be part of a larger mosaic.
Right. And then the conversations can then shift to reconciliation and reparations.
Absolutely. And I think about, you know, the larger concept also of sustainability, right? If we could acknowledge the history of what has sustained people in this desert city for 4,000 years, that we can begin to look towards a future where we utilize the lessons of the ancestors to bring us into a new future when we're dealing with issues of climate change, we're dealing with issues of injustice. And so that context is critical as well.
And you mentioned earlier, you used the term innovation, and that what Dunbar is doing is really innovative. And I really find that, because but I really find that you know, there's this pendulum swinging back, because actually what we're doing is reclaiming, you know, really ancient activities. And so and when you look at the word innovation, you know, it suggests, you know, futurism, and it suggests something. But what we're really doing is reclaiming something that is so old and embedded in our DNA, as I said before. And so that innovation is really an act of reclaiming
and remembering.
And remembering.
Remembering.
And
My
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, just thinking or talking about and having this conversation just makes me think about how these things are continuing to be practiced. You know, there's Dona Atom farmers, Yaqui farmers that are still arid land, like farming through arid land methods, that are continuing to save seeds, that are growing like plants that are adapted to this land. You know, and I think part of that innovation definitely is taking and weaving in those practices from the surrounding communities here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I was just going to say that my mother taught at Dunbar School. I mean, she graduated from the University of Arizona from Tucson High, and then she taught at Dunbar. And when she would tell stories about what it was like there, how they had Black History Week, how people in the community got together, and how one of the things she used to tell me, because she also taught at Holiday School, was when a kid got in trouble, you contacted the parents, and then you didn't call the police. You worked it out right then and there, because you felt like people were your people. They were your community, and it wasn't a matter of that person's bad, we got to put him in some system or get him whatever. You worked to solve the problems, and that kind of connection and community. There's one story in the cookbook, the older one, about a woman who talks about how her family moved to Tucson, and her father became, you know, one of the principals and teachers at Dunbar. And she talks about how happy her life was because of all of these community connections. And so, you know, it just, but how would you know that? If you just came to Tucson, Black people they seem to be almost invisible here.
Yeah. I mean, I think it takes, you know, getting in community and asking questions and listening to stories and humbling yourself to not believe that you know it all, that you can learn. And I think that the Dunbar is a powerful space to do that. And I love that the focus is so targeted towards a sustainable and wellness-based model, right? Because ultimately that's going to be asset-based. It's not about all of the things that are missing from the Black community only, right? It's about all of the gifts that have been shared through community, however diasporic it has been, to sustain a community here. And I was thinking about the garden again, and thinking about what you had said earlier, Debbie, about the idea of food consumption, and just how that situated in the space, how the garden can encourage a more equitable view of food consumption. Can you talk a little bit more about that, you and Yesi, maybe?
Yeah, Yesi, do you want to start?
And you can focus on your role as the garden manager, Yesi. I mean, I would love to hear more of that story if you would like to share.
Yeah, my role as garden manager right now, like I guess a vision that has been pretty prevalent in like our conversations is continuing to create the garden as a space for BIPOC community in Tucson to connect with each other and to, you know, tend to the land like our ancestors have always like tended to the land. And again, like just weaving in all these culturally significant plant medicines and continuing to have some kind of reciprocal sharing of knowledge with each other. So I feel like that's kind of where we're at with the garden, is creating that space to allow all of that to happen. And I think it very much connects to like sustainability, right? Because then folks can continue to grow things that are significant to themselves and that they can continue to share with their community. And this is like the whole process of, I feel like it involves the whole life and death cycle of gardening, which comes from like planting a seed in the ground to harvesting it for food, to like processing it to save the seed once it's gone, and continuing those practices is what's going to keep us connected to the land that's there and those seeds that we're like creating connections with, because I think we add our own little, we add to them and they add to us as much, you know, as we do. Absolutely. So yeah, that's what I envision.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And Debbie?
This idea of what I really like that Yesi has been able to cultivate in the garden and kind of plant the intention of, sometimes we spend a lot of time talking about production and food production and how productive is the garden. And that this idea that the garden is also about being mindful of consumption, because a lot of times our value as human beings is really couched in this you know, capitalistic, what can you produce and what do you consume, and you're only of value in your production and your consumption. And so yes, we have things produced in the garden, but it's really about also creating mindful consumers, mindful of where your food comes from, so that you are able to make better choices with both your time and your energy and your money, and where you spend, how those things contribute to not just your own personal well-being, but the well-being of your community. Absolutely. And so the garden kind of, to overuse a metaphor, plants those seeds
yeah.
of what it is to be a consumer in this society.
Right.
And it starts with nourishing our bodies and how we make choices of consumption that nourish ourselves.
And I think, you know, part of that also is to be able to share the love and enthusiasm of the dishes that we can produce, right? So I wanted to share now the video that Tani was so gracious to share with us around the production of a recipe for sweet potato pie. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, Tani, and how that recipe was selected, and yeah, talk about that that sharing.
Well, my church had a sweet potato pie contest, and I don't come from a family that makes sweet potato pies. It doesn't mean we haven't eaten them, but we did pound cakes, we did peach cobblers, we did other things. And sometimes when you're Black, it feels like that's a little, you know, like you're kind of like, I need to have that skill. So I turned to the cookbook because I knew there were some really good cooks. A few of them I had recruited, a few other people had recruited. And there were 2 sweet potato pie recipes, and I made both of them with regular sugar, everything, just made them the way that they said to make them. And I missed the contest. I got sick that Sunday. And so the next Sunday, I just said, I'll bring the pies. I froze the pies. I said, I'll bring the pies. I'll cut them up. And after church, you know, we can all have a slice. So I was really shocked. People came up to me and they started acting like I just knew everything about making sweet potato pies. And they were discussing this kind and that kind. And they were saying, now, what do you think about this? It's like, I don't know, but I do know that they like those pies. And so I decided if I had to do a recipe, I was going to do that recipe or those 2 recipes.
Okay, so the recipe that I'm doing is a sweet potato pie. It's one of 2 sweet potato recipes in the cookbook. And this is one of the older recipes, but since we're trying to make them a little more healthier, I'm going to use the same measurements, but maybe something that's a little bit healthier. For example, the original recipes call for white sugar, and also the one that I'm doing, which is Grandma's Sweet Potato Pie by Beverly Elliott, it also calls for brown sugar, and I'm using substitutes. This is Swerve granular sugar. and this is swerve brown sugar. And I gotta tell you, they're pretty good. I was very surprised. I'm definitely a sugar addict, and this tastes all right. Not quite sugar, but it tastes okay. So these are the ingredients, the sugar substitutes. Grandma's sweet potato pie uses whole milk, nutmeg, cinnamon, vanilla, and a little bit of salt. Okay, so how do you do the sweet potatoes? One thing I read, I went to this site online called nutritionfacts.org, and it said look for the darkest sweet potato because that has the most antioxidants in it. It turns out sweet potatoes, at least according to this site, are pretty nutritious. The recipe calls for 4 large sweet potatoes, and it doesn't say how you cook them. I used to roast them, but this website says that the healthiest way to prepare a sweet potato is to boil it. So I have an Instant Pot right over here, and I am going to put these in my Instant Pot. Now, you're supposed to take the sweet potatoes and wash them a bit, maybe scrub them a little bit. It says 4, but it says 4 large sweet potatoes in the recipe. But I think these are sort of medium, so I'm just putting 5 in here. And you need half a cup of water. Make sure that you have the valve off so that the steam doesn't keep escaping. And then go to manual. And mine instantly comes on 30 minutes on high, which is exactly what they want you to do in terms of cooking these. And then it's going to do it all by itself. You don't really have to do anything. And they come out perfect, absolutely perfect in an Instant Pot. Of course, you can bake them, you can boil them on top of the stove, but this is so easy. I mean, you put them in there and then you go live your life. You know, you don't think about this for the next 40, 45 minutes. So 30 minutes once it gets started, and then it says to let the potatoes steam in there, sort of like a boiling, and then you don't release the valve, just let it naturally release pressure on its own about 10 minutes. So I've got the sweet potatoes. I'm going to put them on a board here, acrylic board, and from there, I'm just going to cut the sweet potatoes a little bit so that you can see all of that flesh that's inside. And you just take the sweet potatoes, scoop it on out, and it's all nice and soft, and because you've left it in there long enough to cook, and then to let that pressure kind of just do the rest of it. If it's not cooked enough, it's going to be nice and soft and perfect. And you got to do this with all the potatoes, so it takes a little bit of time. Okay, so this is a whole lot of sweet potatoes. I probably didn't need to add in an extra potato. This looks like a whole lot. But, so it says, and this is why I'm using, instead of Barbara Tucker's recipe, which is very good, but I'm using Beverly Elliott's recipe, Grandma's sweet potato pie. The reason I'm using Beverly Elliott's recipe is because she wrote down a lot of different things I thought were kind of interesting that I just would never have thought of. So, okay, so here is the sweet potato pie. And she says, first, mix up the sweet potatoes. So I'm going to get my electric mixer, and I'm going to mix the sweet potatoes. Here's the part that really seemed interesting to me. And that is, she says, remove the strings. And so I'm looking at this thing and I'm saying there really are strings in here. There really, really are little strings that kind of come out at you. And she says, remove the strings. So after this first initial mix, I'm going to just rinse them. Rinse them off. And then she has some other steps. She has you add things in increments, and then each time you check to see if there's strings. So, okay, add the margarine, and that is 1/4 cup margarine. And I'm sure most of you know this. This is really simple stuff. It's all measured out here. It's not like you got to figure out what it is or put it into a cup. But 1/4 cup is, it looks like 1/4 cup is 4 tablespoons. I'm going to do about half a stick. That's half a stick. And I'm going to put this in here. Add the margarine. She says margarine, but I always like butter. And there's a little piece of skin in here, and I just don't want that skin in there. Let me get rid of it. And again, the same thing. You're going to see there's still strings in it, which is really surprising to me. All right, add sugar and egg yolks. So I need half a cup brown sugar. And of course, you can do brown sugar. I mean, you can make this the old-fashioned way, and I guarantee you that's the way I made them from church, and they were great. But since, again, we're seeing how this works with, you know, substituting things like the replacement brown sugar. So I'm just going to kind of loosely pack it. Okay, so half a cup brown sugar or brown sugar alternative. It says 1 1/2 scoops of sugar. And again, I have a sugar replacement, and this is Swerve. And I've used Swerve and some other things because I've been playing with sugar replacements anyway. So I think that it works. So when she says a scoop of sugar, I'm not really sure what she means by a scoop. But I'm going to put in about half a cup. And I did try this before, and I thought it came out pretty good. So I'll put in about half a cup. Add the sugars and the egg yolks. So this will leave you with a yolk. Put this over here. This will leave you with another yolk, 2 egg yolks. So again, you gotta mix it up. So let me just turn the oven on. I'm gonna put it on bake at, it says 350, but my oven runs a little hot, so I'm gonna do 340. And while that's getting hot, I will, I'm just going to wipe down the sides a little with the spatula. And again, the same thing. She says, look for the little strings that are on the beater, on the mixer. And so, again, I'm just going to go ahead and remove them. All right, so next step, add salt, milk, vanilla, cinnamon, and nutmeg. Half a teaspoon salt, a tablespoon of vanilla. So you can measure it with a tablespoon, or if you kind of know what you're doing, you know, just go ahead and pour it in. And also vanilla is one of those things. It doesn't matter if you have a little bit more, I think. Nutmeg, 1/4 teaspoon, cinnamon, 3/4 teaspoon. You probably notice I'm a little generous with this, but hey, that's because I like this stuff, you know. She uses 1/4 cup of milk. Now, the other recipe that's in there, like I said, they have different kinds of taste. One uses, I think it's a whole half cup of evaporated milk. They don't quite taste the same. There really are subtle differences in terms of the sweet potato pie. So 1/4 cup of milk. And beat again. And it's so smooth and so fluffy. But again, she says check for the strings. And again, there's still strings in there. And that's the last time we're gonna do the strings. And this time she says, put in the egg whites, remember left over from the egg yolks. And this will make it really fluffy and puffy. So. So you can see how fluffy this looks. All right, so that is really it for the batter. And what we need to do is now prepare the pie crust. And in the stores, they sell the little tin foils, aluminum pans, and they already have the pie crust in them. And I looked for that because it's just easier to use that. But they didn't have it. They had the unroll and bake pie crust. So that's what I'm using now. So this is a bit different in terms of, you know, how you do this. And if you're used to using the pie crust that comes already laid out and everything, this is going to look different. And one of the things is you may not get that perfect kind of edge that you know, we all like. Now you need to prick the pie crust just a few times. Then pour this into the crust. And this makes a nice, good amount too. I like that. Fine. So anyway, I'm just going to smooth it out because I did one of these before and it wasn't smooth. Definitely was good, but it was not smooth. I'm just going to kind of, you know, smooth this out. So we got all that there. And now this goes into the oven. And one of the things she says to do, and I actually think it's a good idea, she says put the pie crust in first for 5 minutes once you got the temperature you want. And I think that's a really good idea. Okay, so after 35 minutes, the pie should be finished. And here it is. Whether you use substitute for the sugar, substitute some of these alternative sweeteners, you're gonna love the pie. All right, enjoy.
So I want to shift a little tiny bit. Desiree, you did talk a little bit about, you know, different strategies and pivots that y'all have made and dealing with COVID. And so I just want to talk a little bit more about how is Dunbar addressing the issues of COVID right now? How are you all pivoting? What do you, what do you imagine this new normal might bring to the Dunbar?
I think that we're creating community in the ways that we can, and we're making the best of it. And to me, I mean, it's so important that Black people, especially Black, Indigenous, and people of color continue to dream in these times. We're good at that. It's in our DNA. We carry the resilience within us from our ancestors. And so we are creative. And so even if we have to meet online, we're being online, you know, how can we still have these pressing conversations and create community and connections and dream together? That's so important, and continue learning and exchanging knowledge. And so we're doing that in the best ways we know how right now. And so online, but I know Debbie and I and Yesi, I feel like our even into our team meetings, we're dreaming. And so we still have wonderful visions for the future of a health and wellness center and meetups outside, and how can we still meet in person but still socially distance and keep it safe, and safety is our number one priority, obviously. So that's what we're doing now.
Right. Yeah. And I'm glad that you all are still meeting. You're still congregating together, even if it's in an online space. I think it can be super nourishing. And speaking of nourishing, Debbie, you know, in part of our video that we weren't able to share because we awoke a whole, seemed like an entire village of birds during our conversation in the garden. You had shared a story that I really wanted you to share, if you don't mind, about the Master Gardener program and Root Shock.
Yeah,
So
I was viewing this Master Gardener program that's part of a master class, a larger master class thing that folks can get a subscription to online. And so I was watching this Master Gardener, and he had brought up the concept of root shock.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when you uproot a plant from an environment that it is used to, that it's acclimated to, that is built for its survival and success, and you retransplant it or try to place it in an environment, in a different environment, it experiences a shock. Mm-hmm. Because it's not used to that environment. That new environment wasn't its original environment. And there may not necessarily be the nutrients and the things that it takes for that plant to survive in that new environment immediately accessible to that plant. And it takes a lot of nurturing. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of love and care for the gardener to ensure the success of that plant by creating an environment where that plant can grow and thrive. And I immediately thought about Black people when I heard him discuss root shock. The idea that we have been just uplifted from an environment that was built for us to survive and transplanted into this other environment that has not been hospitable, that has not been designed for us to thrive. And it has been centuries, that has taken centuries for us to continue to create an environment that ensures our survival. Mm-hmm. And so it really has taken, and will continue to take many more years, hopefully not centuries, for us to be assured that there is an environment in which root shock will not continue to happen, to be an epigenetic piece of how we function in this community and in this society.
One of the things I thought was really surprising, I'm not sure if these statistics now hold, but suicide rates of African American people, much lower than those of white Americans. And I think that speaks to the strength of connections, the strength of survival techniques, the strength of that. And like Debbie said, an inhospitable environment. Just think suicide levels being significantly lower. I mean, that says something about, I think, Black community and Black heritage in the US.
Yeah. But I also have to say that we can't discount that there is a rising suicide rate among African Americans, and that we do have to address mental health issues in the community. And sometimes there is a false narrative that we are so strong and that we're so able to endure all these things. And so I appreciate what you're saying, Tani, but I also have to I want to make sure that we still understand that there is real trauma that affects mental health, and that we have to be not afraid to not be as resilient as folks think that Black people should be. And sometimes those suicide rate statistics aren't accurately recorded. And you know, I just want us to make sure that we as a Black community are saying it is okay not to be strong. It is okay not to be okay.
And I agree with that. What I'm trying to say is, when we look at the things that have enabled us to survive, I think it is the oral tradition. I think it is the times that we've been together. And I think they're still needed today. Of course, we need that mental health aspect. Give me a break. Most of us are a little bit crazy, I think, a little bit. And but what has made us strong? What has made us able to endure things? And that's kind of what I want to focus on, though I recognize there's so much going on here. Like you mentioned, Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. It's amazing that we're here. It's amazing that many different groups are still here and still functioning and still doing things.
Amen. Yeah, I agree with you, Tani, in that regard. Yeah.
In these last few moments, thank you both for this conversation. And thank you all for this conversation. But in these last few moments, I just wanted to kind of do a little bit of a round robin, honestly, to talk about, given everything that you have learned, everything that you're dreaming about, envisioning and hoping to create a place where folks can thrive. What are just one thing that you want the community at large, our TMY community, to know about the Dunbar and to come away from this conversation knowing? And I'll just ask Desiree if you would like to start.
Yeah, I want to bring attention to Debbie's beautiful shirt of preserve Black space. I think it comes down to preserving Black space, Black energy, Black stories, and Black lives. And that's what the Dunbar is here to do: uplift and create community. And so I believe in that. And if everybody watching believes in that, then stop by, take a tour, support us, follow us on social media, come to our workshops, and really uplift that space and that history, especially in Tucson.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And Yesi, what was one thing that you want folks to take away?
Yeah, I agree with what Desiree said right now. I definitely agree with that. And just that this is a time to envision the things that we hope to see in the future, as the things that we want to carry into the future as people of color, as Indigenous people, as Black people. I think that those are all the things that we're dreaming about during this strange time, are the things that I hope that we can all bring into fruition. And the space there is definitely, it's all being filled with all of that energy and that intention for creating and preserving a Black space within the greater Tucson community.
And Debbie?
I just agree with Desiree and Yesi, because what they're really talking about is imagination, right? Can we absolutely imagine a place where Black people are centered and respected, and that we ourselves see ourselves in one another as Black people, that we ourselves can embrace everything that it means to be Black in our sexuality, in our identity, in our politics, in our religion, everything that makes up who we are, that can live and thrive and survive. If we can imagine that, it can happen.
Absolutely. And Tani?
The thing about respect, that was what I was thinking of when you asked that question. There are reasons that we should look at each other with respect, all different communities, ethnicities, and races. We have reasons. No one community has it all. There are little bits and pieces in all of us, or at least that's my philosophy. And what I hope from this cookbook is that it becomes a little keepsake. And if you ever need to be reminded of the diversity and the innovations and all of the wonderful things that make people, and particularly Black people, the part of the human race, this would be a place where you can just sort of pick the cookbook up and read the stories and try the recipes and remember, that you're part of something.
Well, I can't believe how quickly the time has gone, y'all. And I just want to extend my incredible thanks, my deep felt gratitude to you all for sharing a part of the story to help us develop a more complete story of this place that we call Tucson. And thank you for your work. I look forward to staying connected, to meeting you all in the garden someday and soon, and sharing pie, sharing stories, and just continuing this work together. So thank you all so much. I really
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yes, thanks.
For work. Thank you.
Thank you. And to our TMY audience, I bid you good night. Thank you for participating in this TMY Revisited and Reimagined. And have a good evening. Thanks.